All right, so here we are. 24 hours out. Whoa, oh my goodness. Hard to kill tomorrow, huh? That's where we're at. 2 rascals have been put down, and there's 1 rascal remaining. Last month it was Dez in Michigan. Last night it was Wentz in San Antonio, and tomorrow it's Trey's turn to fold, just like his punk-ass friends. So let's talk. What do we want to talk about?
If you retain your title on Sunday, when you retain your title on Sunday, where do you hope to take the X Division in 2020?
Well, I've taken the X Division to the Triple X Division thus far. It only took me 8 months inside of Impact Wrestling to capture this. So I think there's big things ahead for me, and there's big things ahead for my division in 2020.
I was wondering, Nick Hausman Wrestling, can you take us back to Bound for Glory, winning that match and what it meant to you? I felt like that was arguably the biggest moment of your career so far.
Yeah, it absolutely was. It was. I've been talking about an age-old phrase all weekend. That weekend, it was manifest destiny. It was the idea that I've made a career thus far off of putting myself in the right place at the right time and being nothing short of an opportunist. And Bound for Glory was perfect evidence of that. It was me putting it into the universe that this was my destiny, and then manifesting that destiny in front of a sold-out crowd in Chicago for Bound for Glory. Huge moment.
Obviously, things have come very quickly for you. You burst on the scene almost out of nowhere in Impact. Talk about some of the influences you had, either those who have helped train you or those you've studied. Who have been some of the people that have kind of inspired you as you've had this huge trajectory forward?
Well, as a kid, of course, Jeff Hardy was my favorite wrestler for a very long time, which is perfect. Jeff Hardy, Rob Van Dam, of course, being in the locker room with him now is awesome. But my training originally comes from the Wild Samoans, and that is the most solid foundation that you can have getting into the wrestling business. It teaches you everything you need to know about the bare bones rules as far as respect goes, and respecting the ring, and respecting the people you work with, and respecting the business that you're in. And then from there, my views were broadened when I started spending more time on the East Coast with Combat Zone Wrestling and everybody that came with that. And then it's been I don't like to stay anywhere for more than like a year and a half. So I like to just change my environment, change the people I'm learning from, change it up always, because you can never learn enough.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask as a follow-up to that, is how long do you see yourself with Impact Wrestling? 10 more months?
Well, I'm signed for at least 3 years, and I'm only 9 months into that now, so we've got time. I'm going to be here for a long time.
So you mentioned that you are taking the X Division into a new direction, and some would say that that's kind of distracting from the core of what the X Division is historically. How would you respond to that?
Historically, here is what history is. History is whoever's making that history. Am I wrong? And I'm making that history now. So this division is whatever I say this division is. So historically, doesn't matter. What matters is me right now.
We've seen you run with Reno Scum in the past. Is it possible they can make an appearance to secure a title win for you on Sunday?
Do you think that I need them to secure a title win on Sunday? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not.
That's not what you're saying? All right. Well, there's some good friends of mine. So if I need them, should the Rascals decide that they need to help their boy out, well, I've got my boys as well.
You mentioned not wanting to sit around for too long. Innately, where does that come from within you? Like that, got to keep moving at it.
that's just kind of been a habit of mine since I was a kid. I could never be involved in enough activities. I could never sit at home and just like play video games or whatever. It was always I did musical theater, I skateboarded, I practiced parkour. Like I just had anything that interested me artistically. I invested as much time as I possibly could in it, from morning till night. It was I hardly spent any time at home. I would stay at friends' houses more often than not, just because I liked to constantly be. It's all about the experience for me. It's experiencing life and everything life has to offer. So I constantly putting myself in the right place at the right time, as I said earlier, putting myself in a place to experience all that I can. So that carried right over into wrestling when I got into wrestling, and I spent a year and a half with the Samoans, and then spent a year and a half kind of traveling the East Coast, and then went to the Midwest, where I've been for almost 2 years now. So it's just got to keep moving.
Can I ask what your background in musical theater is? Like, I'm kind of interested to know what roles you played.
If it wasn't professional wrestling, musical theater is probably what I would be most into right now. I started it middle school, I think. Yeah, it was middle school. I did my first show, and I've been in 14 productions. Yeah, 14 productions since then, on-stage productions. If I had time for it right now, I would still do community theater whenever I could, if it was possible. But I just do not have the kind of time for that right now. But hopefully that's something I'll be able to keep around in my life.
What's your favorite role? Do you have a favorite musical theater role?
Well, Titanic was a very emotional show to be a part of, especially because that was my senior year of high school. So real tears on stage, because like me and my senior class, like we were saying goodbye to each other. Essentially, it was the last time we were going to be on stage together, and we had been doing shows together for how many years since then, since dating back to middle school. So Titanic was a really very emotional one to get into. I also got to do Les Mis, which is a classic through and through.
Were you Jean Valjean?
I was not. I was what did I do in Les Mis? I was one of the revolutionary guys, and then I usually did a couple different roles in every show that I did, especially because I was one of the few guys that was able to dance well. So they would always put me in positions to do that, and the acrobatics always got to come into play during musicals as well. They always gave me a chance to get my acrobatic stuff in while I was doing the shows.
There's some ties with you and Sami Callihan due to your involvement when Pro Wrestling Revolver is teaming up with OVE, or some involvement in OVE, something we could see in your future?
I've helped OVE out on a few occasions now, because I have to admit it, I do owe a little bit of how far I've come to OVE, because it was them taking me under their wing in the Midwest. That's what led to my involvement in the Midwest at all. After I had done my East Coast stuff for a while, and I was feeling like it was time to move on from that, they were the ones that brought me out to the Midwest, and I lived with them, and they taught me more than I could have ever even imagined at the time. And a couple times at OVW, I've helped out the OV crowd, a couple of times in Blackcraft, in a couple of different areas like that. Yeah, so I mean, if they need a hand, I'll lend a hand, but they definitely have enough firepower on their own.
Okay.
So this Sunday at Arlington, you'll be going up against Trey Miguel, and you've taken more of a personal approach in this match with Trey Miguel, and it's really got him very amped up, very riled up. Was that your intention the entire time?
Let's talk about personal business with Trey Miguel a little bit. Me and Trey Miguel go way back. Maybe not as far back as he does with his boys, but my first match in the Midwest, when I broke into that scene with OVE and met them, my first match in the Midwest was a multi-man match for a championship, and Trey won that match. He beat me in that match, actually. And him and I went back and forth a little bit in that promotion at that time, and we were both very young. We were both still doing a lot to discover ourselves. He had just come out to the Midwest scene as well to try to grow and get out of the area that he was stuck in. And so we did a lot of growing and learning together, and we even lived together. We were roommates for a while out in the Midwest wrestling houses. And yeah, so there's always been a little bit of friendly competition between me and Trey. And he got here a little bit before I did, but then I got here, and we saw who the better man was, and he didn't like that. So, personal business aside, it's all about being smart. And I'm going to do whatever I got to do to keep this. So, if that means things need to get a little personal with Trey, then that's what's going to happen. Mind is an easy thing to play with, and it's a very beneficial tool in all of this. You can be as athletic as you want to be, you can be as strong as you want to be, but if you're clouded with anger, with jealousy, with emotion, like I believe Trey is clearly, then it's all about the advantage. And the advantage is on me right now. Champion's advantage.
All right, thank you. You want to pose for